Hello everyone, welcome to Inconvenient Truths. I'm your host, Jennifer Zeng. Today I will share some more exclusive information regarding the COVID situation in China, as well as another model, a more reliable model to estimate the death toll in China. I think understanding real situations is important for us to assess what could happen in China next and how that could affect the rest of the world. First of all, I'd like to share one very important fact and one very important opinion. The fact is, the CCP has already admitted that 80% of the Chinese population have been infected. So that means over 1 billion people were infected within a month. This is unprecedented in human history from whatever angle. And the important opinion is, it is very wrong to calculate or estimate China's death toll based on any fatalities in any other country or region. We must explore more reliable methods and channels. In my show on January 19th, I shared this estimation based on the number of cremators in China. With a very conservative estimation, we can get 140 million deaths in 3 years. After watching my show, another Chinese language YouTuber did another kind of estimation, which I think is quite reasonable too. So today I want to share how he did his math. Before I share his math, let's watch a video first. It shows a newly built crematorium in Huhehout City, Inner Mongolia in China. This crematorium has just started operation. So this new built crematorium has just started. I've turned off the music and as it functions. So the green light says operating or in operation. Okay, so this is a new crematorium that just started operate. There are many reports about other crematoriums being built, expanded, or buying more furnaces. We can very reasonably assume that the current crematoriums operate on a 24-hour basis, and many people reported that 2 or 3 bodies are cremated together. Let's see this. It's a viewer's comment on one of my shows saying that his friends in Shanghai told him they didn't bother to take their family's ashes as you don't know whether the ashes really belong to your family member, and the waiting line was a mile long outside the morgue, etc. Another viewer left such a comment. My friend from China told me that doctors in hospital issued death certificates for his grandparents before death so they could join the queue to the crematorium. In his case, the grandparents died before reaching the end of the queue. So these are the factual basis for my following calculation. This is an estimation of how many people could have died since December 8th. I did the calculation yesterday. Suppose the cremator number is still 7,043. This is a number for 2021, as we don't know the number for 2022. But we do know there are many more cremators. Suppose all cremators operate 24 hours now and it takes only 30 minutes to cremate one body. And suppose the waiting time is 5 days. So I used 45 days to do the calculation instead of 49 days. And I did calculations for different scenarios. If one body is cremated each time, the total deaths since December 8th. By the way, the reason I used December 8th because that was the day the CCP lifted the lockdowns. So the total deaths since December 8th could be 31.05 million if the cremation rate is 58.8%, or it can be 54.83 million if the cremation rate is 33%. 58.8% is the official rate for 2021. I used the rate 33% as I read a report by the Chinese edition of the Epoch Times. This report says that Mr. Zhou from Yueyang City in Hunan province said that 2/3 of the dead were buried instead of being cremated. He said, "We have a lot of farmland around us. There are some deserted ditches, small hillsides, and other abandoned places. So it is not a problem to bury a lot of people at these places." So I guess Mr. Zhou is from the countryside. If cremation is so difficult, it is reasonable to assume that people in the countryside will choose to bury their dead in deserted hillsides or places. Now, let's go back to our estimation. If we assume that two bodies were cremated together, the death numbers could be 62 million and 110 million based on different cremation rate. If three bodies are cremated together, the numbers could be 93.16 million and 164.5 million. So these are estimations based on the cremator numbers in China and the overwhelming crowded situation. I know the results look shocking, but they are based on a very solid but very simple calculation that one can hardly challenge. I think this kind of calculation is much more reliable than the models based on fatalities from other countries. So, are you surprised? The most conservative calculation gave us numbers in the tens of millions of deaths in the past 49 days, and the more radical calculation brought the numbers to over 100 million in only 49 days. If this is the case, is it too hard to imagine that 400 million could have died in the past 3 years? And also, at the beginning stage of the outbreaks in 2020, crematoriums were also overwhelmed. Mobile industrial incinerators were deployed to Wuhan. These industrial incinerators can burn up to 5 tons of waste per day and can burn a load in as little as 2 seconds. Okay, now let me share something. There are also official reports that the so-called ice barrel technology has been introduced to China. With this technology, corpses can be instantly frozen in liquid nitrogen at minus 196 degrees Celsius, then turn into powders form. It is much faster than cremation. I have shared quite a few videos talking about this method that has been piloted in Wuhan, but I won't show them here. If you are interested, please go to my Twitter account at Jennifer Zeng 97 at Jennifer Zeng 97 to take a look. So these are the videos I shared. So my point here is my calculation has not included these bodies that were handled via those industrial incinerators or with ice barrel technology. So the real number could be higher. Actually, I shared this concept in my Chinese language show the other day. When dealing with very big numbers, our feelings, imaginations, or visual impressions are not reliable at all. For example, the biggest amount of cash notes I ever handled was 9.6 million yuan. It took a normal-sized travel bag similar to this one to fit in all those cash notes. By the way, that was not my money. It belonged to our customers. I once worked for an investment consultant company in China. Anyway, that was the biggest amount of cash notes I ever handled. Suppose someone suddenly shows me a room full of cash notes or a very big pile as big as a mountain of cash notes. Can I know whether there are hundreds of billions or millions of trillions of dollars there? No, I can't. I wouldn't be able to tell at all. So when dealing with large numbers, our feelings, imaginations, or visual impressions won't be able to make a correct judgment at all. That's why we'd better rely on rational calculations and solid numbers. And very simple grade 4 level math can give us estimated death numbers in the tens of millions or over 100 millions. I'm not saying that my calculations are the only things that we should go by, but at least they establish a concept of the magnitude of the loss of lives. I hope you could agree with this. The following are some other figures and reports about the situation in China, which can also help us establish some concepts. Former law professor Yuan Hongbin at Peking University told the New Tang Dynasty TV that according to his source in China, more than 3.8 million people have died in China during the past 2 months. And both officials and the public are very angry with the CCP. The situation is worse than the Great Chinese Famine, which saw about 40 million starve to death. But now in only 2 months, 3.8 million have died. The Chinese edition of the Epoch Times exclusively obtained some internal CCP documents. This document shows that a special task force was established in Nanjing City, Jiangsu Province, to especially handle and coordinate the cremation of bodies in the city. And the number of cremations and burials are top secrets and cannot be revealed. These are the death numbers from December 1st, 2022 to January 2nd, 2023. During December 1st to December 17th, the number ranged between 111 and 155. On January 2nd, the number jumped to 761. That is over 6 times more than usual. In this picture, the blue-colored columns are the cremation numbers for people older than 80 in Nanjing City between December 18th, 2022 to January 11th this year. The green-colored columns represent numbers on the same date of the previous year. These are the workload numbers of Nanjing crematoriums from December 29th to January 18th. I don't know what the unit is for these numbers. The blue-colored columns are the numbers for this year. The orange-colored ones are the numbers for last year. We can see a big jump in workload as well. This table shows 22,000 bodies were cremated in Nanjing City in the first 5 months of 2022. That's 140 per day. From December 18th to January the 2nd this year, 8,233 people died, according to the Nanjing government. That's about 4 times more than the first 5 months of 2022. This table shows from November 11th to December 17th, all 510 bodies cremated at the crematorium in Pukou district in Nanjing City were marked as normal death. None were marked as died of COVID or cannot decide whether the death was related to COVID. This table shows from November 11th to December 17th, all 500 bodies cremated at the crematorium in Lishui district in Nanjing City were marked as normal death. None were marked as died of COVID or cannot decide whether the death was related to COVID. And this table shows that from November 11th to December 17th, out of 4,300 bodies cremated in Nanjing City, only 20 were marked as died of COVID. This table also says that 3,070 bodies were cremated during the same period last year. So this year, 28.27% more bodies were handled. So let's see another Chinese language report. This Chinese language report reveals some shocking numbers and facts too. It says that Mr. Cheng, a businessman who lives in New York, told the Epoch Times that one CCP Health Commission official told him that 10% of CCP members have died. He said this official is responsible for population monitoring and encouraging birth. So they have a population monitoring mechanism, and that's why they know. He also said he noticed that the CCP has yet to deny or refute the 200 million death number presented by the founder of Falun Gong. But many ordinary people in China believe this number, as many of their family members, friends, neighbors, and colleagues have died. People who work in the funeral industry also believe this number. And one official at the Exit and Entrance Administration Bureau told him that there are at least 200,000 bodies in Beijing that have not been cremated yet. Also, his wife comes from Beijing, and 3 of his wife's relatives in Beijing have died recently. Doctors are not allowed to list COVID as the cause of death when issuing death certificates. One of his friends living in Fangshan district in Beijing said 5 elderly people in his family died recently, but none of the 5 people have been cremated yet. One of them was even a deputy director of the Public Security Bureau. One of his other friends, whose surname is He, told him that infections in prisons are very serious too. 8,000 people in Beijing number 2 prison were infected in 3 days after the CCP lifted restrictions. Many people died. This report says that according to Wang Ning, who works for the medical sector in Jiangsu province, the number of household registration or hukou cancellations in many parts of China is 3 to 5 times higher than usual. You know, everybody in Chinese cities has a household registration. After somebody dies, his or her family members need to cancel the registration. So this means 3 to 5 times more people are dying now. I also heard a story told by a Chinese language YouTuber called Chen Weiyu. She said that one of her audience members told her that when he went to cancel his family member's household registration, the police officer asked him to come back later as they had used up the quota for cancellations. When I heard this story, I didn't know whether I should cry or laugh. You know, when the CCP adopted its one family, one child policy, one needed to have a quota first before one could have a child. If you didn't have a quota when you needed to give birth, the hospital would refuse to accept you. Now you need a quota to die in China. Have you ever heard a more ridiculous thing in the world? I haven't. That's why I use the phrase a quota to die in the thumbnail photo for this show. Well, that's all for today. Thank you very much for watching. In this fast-changing world, we must hold fast to the truths. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't. If you're already subscribed, please like and share my content and double check that you are still subscribed. Also, if you could, please go to my website at jenniferzengblog.com. That's jenniferzengblog.com. Sign up for a membership to read the exclusive scripts for members or make a donation to support my truth-telling efforts. Thank you. See you next time.